Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to our Backlog Cleared video. Today's video is on my Shout Factory, Scream Factory collection, which a lot of these titles I've had for a while. A couple of job lots on eBay that I picked up, but also I have picked up the odd one or two, especially some of the 4Ks, but I certainly have kind of slowed down when it comes down to Shout and Scream Factory, especially with quite a lot of these titles are available on other labels. I mean, I have double dipped in quite a few of these, obviously just by accident. So I'm just going to quickly go through the titles. Again, this isn't going to be a huge examination of the films. This is just to make me feel slightly better that I have went through a backlog of another label, even though obviously every now and again additions will be made, but that's not the point of this video. So just in alphabetical order until we get to a couple of steelbooks and Shout Factory rather than Scream Factory. So this is Alligator in 4K, which has the TV cut and the theatrical cut. Lewis Teague's wonderful Jaws rip-off, but with an alligator, written by John Sayles. So of course it has socio-political commentary in it. And recently 101 Films in the UK released a lovely box set which I accidentally bought, which has the original on 4K and Alligator 2 on Blu-ray. I will never had Alligator 2 on DVD, so that means my purchase of that is absolutely justified. It's a very nice 4K of a wonderful little film that always puts a smile on your face, and it's a great Robert Forster performance, especially all about the stuff about his hair loss. So that's Alligator. Next is a personal favourite. It's Larry Cohen's The Ambulance, just because I'm a fan of Janine Turner from her Northern Exposure days, and obviously Cliffhanger. This has a great little turn by James Earl Jones. Eric Roberts has one of the worst mullets in cinema history. Red Buttons even makes an appearance. Megan Gallagher of Millennium is in this as well. And again, this has a commentary by Larry Cohen, who's no longer with us sadly, but Larry Cohen's commentaries are always fun. So The Ambulance I've always had a soft spot for. This is probably one that was in a job lot, but this is The Amityville Horror. Again, this is available in a 4K. It's a film I'll never get in 4K. Another wonderful, moving, subtle performance by Rod Steiger as a priest who has trouble with his flies. The original and possibly the best, I'm not quite sure. John Carpenter's Assault on Precinct 13. I have this on Region B as well. Why wouldn't you? Because it is one of John Carpenter's best. Forget the awful remake. Backcountry, which is a moving story of a couple of backpackers who get lost and then get attacked by a bear. It does have one of the most disturbing and horrible bear attacks. You do see bone. It's a nice little film. I do believe this was in one of the job lots. Lots of nice scenery and a massive bear doing severe damage. The Battery, which is a fun little zombie film. This is available on Arrow with their second feature After Midnight. This is available just as an extra, basically. But low budget, but still very enjoyable. The Blob, which I might actually have to get on the 4K. This is one of the best remakes ever made that nobody really talks about. Directed by Chuck Russell, co-written by Frank Darabont. Characters that you do care about, I should say probably Kevin Dillon's mullet, challenges Eric Roberts' mullet from The Ambulance. Characters you care about who are then savagely killed by the Blob. I do believe even children get killed by the Blob in this film. So much better than the Steve McQueen original. So I might have to accidentally pick up the 4K of this from Scream Factory. I think there is like a German Blu-ray available for Region B only collectors, but I'm not actually sure if there's going to be a 4K, a kind of European 4K, not 4K's markers are multi-region. But I probably will accidentally pick up the 4K from Scream Factory of the Blob because it's just a little gem. For some reason I have 2 copies of The Burning, which isn't a very good slasher unless you like large scissors. And this must have been a job lot because I have a non-slipcover edition of The Burning. Normally I would go to the place that I sell some of my Blu-rays, but they don't take Region A releases and I can't be bothered selling them on eBay. That's my excuse, I'm sticking to it. Creepshow in this nice little box with lovely cover art. Not perfect, but a lot of fun. Now this is a lot of fun and it's just about perfect. This is Dead Ringers by Cronenberg. Again, I'm not really sure why in Europe we have like a bare bones Blu-ray release. Surely somebody like Second Sight, who did a lovely job on Crimes of the Future 4K, surely this should be a deluxe version of Dead Ringers. It's an absolute masterpiece. This is the 2-disc Scream Factory version, which is a commentary, unfortunately not by Cronenberg, but by William Beard, who's an author of a book on Cronenberg. But there is a commentary of Jeremy Irons, which is absolutely fantastic. And in disc 2 there's the 1:6:6:1 ratio version, which is Cronenberg's preferred aspect ratio, and there's interviews with Stephen Lack and Heidi von Palesk, director of photography Peter Krzyzewski, and special effects artist Gordon Smith, vintage interviews and behind the scenes. So I'd highly recommend picking this up. I mean, this should get a 4K as well, but I guess it's maybe not that popular. The Dead Room, which has Job Lot written all over it. This is a little Australian film set in the 70s. I suppose this is a kind of Australian Conjuring universe before the Conjuring universe actually existed. About 3 investigators in an old house. The Doctor and the Devils, which is basically Burke and Hare, but they couldn't use the names Burke and Hare. This has a tremendous cast. Timothy Dalton, can you believe it? Jonathan Pryce, Twiggy. Julian Sands, Stephen Ray, Phyllis Logan, Beryl Reid, Patrick Stewart. It's a cast of literally about 20, but it's actually a lot of fun. There's Timothy Dalton cheesing it up quite well. Dog Soldiers, at this time, or at the time, this was kind of the best version of Dog Soldiers that you could see, even though the print's not very good, but we kind of now know why. Obviously Second Sight released the 4K of this. I don't know if Scream Factory's actually released a 4K as well. Neil Marshall's second best film. Escape from New York. Don't need to say any more than this. This is a 2-disc edition. And there's Snake on the back. Event Horizon, which is lovely. It's a lovely cover. Absolutely wonderful. That's one of the better Scream Factory covers as well. Hopefully one day there'll be a 20-hour cut released. Evo Speak, Gentle Ben nowhere to be found, but Clint Howard is. This is actually a Code Red co-release with Scream Factory. The Exorcist 3, my favourite Exorcist film, as long as it's the Legion cut. This was one of the first Region A discs I bought. There's another one that might actually have been the first in this pile. But The Exorcist 3, George C. Scott, who of course I'm not the biggest fan of, gives one of his best performances. Brad Dourif, who you see more of in the Legion cut, is wonderful. Has one of the best jump scares in cinema history. Directed by William Peter Blatty. It's awesome and far better than the original, but that's just my opinion. So accidentally I had to get the 4K of it. Unfortunately the 4K is just the theatrical version, not the Legion cut, which is a bit of a shame. Granted, the Legion cut does have kind of VHS footage inserted in it, because that's the best they could get, because the studios just completely made a mockery of it. They were happy with it being Legion because of the embarrassment of Exorcist 2, but then they changed their mind and said, no, we'll call it Exorcist 3, but wait a minute, there's no exorcism in the film. Quick, throw in an exorcist and an exorcism. So Nicol Williamson is in the theatrical cut performing an exorcism, and in the Legion cut, in Blatty's preferred Legion cut, Nicol Williamson is nowhere to be seen. So this is the 3-disc 4K edition. As I said, it's unfortunate that Legion isn't in 4K, not 4 cuts. Bloody hell. But this is again the friendship between George C. Scott, who I'm not a huge fan of, and Ed Flanders is just wonderful. The banter between the two of them, the sense of dread and menace and creepiness, the atmosphere that's built up by Blatty is just superb. Yeah, it's one of my favourite films, with the number 3 in the title. Next is a wonderful box set. We'll get to a box set that's perhaps not so wonderful, but this is the Fly collection. Beautiful artwork, and it has 5 films: The Fly from 1958, Return of the Fly, The Curse of the Fly, Cronenberg's Fly, and the kind of underrated but messed about with Fly 2. It's just a lovely set of some wonderful fun films. Always check before you go into strange pods. John Carpenter's The Fog. Not my favourite Carpenter by a long shot, but still a lot of fun. Again, avoid the remake. The Funhouse by Tobe Hooper. Not great, let's be honest, but that artwork is really nice, and you do get a commentary with Tobe Hooper, who of course is sadly no longer with us either. A Roger Corman cult classic, Galaxy of Terror. This has a ton of special features which I'm not going to go into. Halloween 3, again, this is my favourite Halloween film. For the people that say Michael Myers isn't in it, it's ridiculous. He's on a television screen for about 5 seconds, so technically he is in Halloween 3. This is just absolutely gorgeous, and I probably will accidentally pick up the 4K of this at some point. Scream Factory does have a 4K. Directed by Tommy Lee Wallace. It's just so good. The wonderful Tom Atkins, and the most annoying brainworm of a jingle ever created. The Harvest with Michael Shannon and Samantha Morton. This is a creepy, horrible little film about parents who keep a child in a bed. Strange place to put a child. And another child accidentally comes into the house and finds out why the child is in the bed. Sounds riveting. The Howling, again, wonderful artwork there. Again, you can get this in 4K, but I haven't really got around to it, not really that bothered. But certainly a lot of fun. Probably the best out of the 7 films, something like that. The Incredible Melting Man, which is a lovely little film about a man who melts. Certainly there's a bit of Quatermass about it. Also not quite as creepy as Quatermass, but a lovely little film. John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness, speaking of lovely little films. One of the few films to perhaps get the Lovecraftian feel correct, along with a couple of I've completely blanked on his name, who did Reanimator and Beyond, From the Beyond. That's absolutely atrocious. I've completely forgotten his name. You know who I mean. In the Mouth of Madness, one of Sam Neill's finest performances. Jürgen Prochnow, about an investigator investigating a novelist. Stuart Gordon, yes, thank you. Thank you, the person at the back who was shouting, Stuart Gordon! It's Stuart Gordon who did Reanimator. Lake Placid, a fun Jaws rip-off. Short and pretty sweet. Again, forget the multiple sequels that were created for some reason. And again, a wonderful little performance by all involved. This might have been the performance that kick-started Brendan Gleeson's Hollywood career. But it's a perfect example of a film that is barely an hour and a half, doesn't need to be any longer. Everybody's having fun, and the audience will have fun too. Mad Max, the original, not with subtitles as it was originally released in certain places in the world. I still think Fury Road's the best Mad Max film, but that's just me. Now a classic that has been rumoured to have a 4K coming at some point. Michael Mann's one of his masterpieces, Manhunter. This has a theatrical version, don't bother with that. It's got the director's cut, which is the best available, even though the European VHS cut for me is the definitive Manhunter, which we'll probably not see on 4K. Manhunter is just one of the films in the 80s, far superior to Silence of the Lambs. Brian Cox's Hannibal Lecter runs rings round Anthony Hopkins' pantomime Dame performance as Hannibal Lecter. It's just marvellous. The Monkey's Paw, with the wonderful Stephen Lang, who seems to have made a living now on little horror films like Don't Breathe and Don't Move and Don't Sit Down and Don't Go Into the Toilet. This is okay. I should actually say, inside my copy of Manhunter, I do actually have my own created copy of the European VHS cut. Yes, I know I'm sad, and I've even written the definitive at the bottom, but sadly that will never get a Blu-ray or a 4K release, so the director's cut might be the best we could hope for. I mean, the theatrical cut does remove some lines of dialogue and make some scenes shorter, so that it's actually quite jarring. I don't know why they decided to do that, but at least I've got my own copy of the European video cut on DVD. A film that I only did pick up fairly recently. I'd never seen it before, but it's actually very, very good. My Bloody Valentine. I think this was actually quite cheap because Scream Factory released the 4K of it. Another wonderful Canadian slasher, I believe. Yeah, this one has the theatrical cut and uncut version with more gore. This is a 2-disc and it's really good. I would highly recommend it. Again, that's been remade as well. And again, I think this might have been the first Region A Nightbreed. Arguably David Cronenberg's finest performance. And this has the Cabal cut. No, maybe not the full Cabal cut, but it does have a cut with 40 minutes added. So I don't think it's the true Cabal cut, because I think that had about 3 hours of footage. I think Clive Barker got a little bit carried away. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect at all. But again, this suggestion that the monsters are actually the normal people and it's us that are weird. Crazy idea. This is the box set that's perhaps not as good as the Fly box set, but it's a lovely box set. It's the Omen collection with far too many films in it. Obviously the Omen is a lot of fun. Omen 2, which was partly directed by Mike Hodges before he got fired. Omen 3, the Sam Neill years. Omen 4 with a little girl instead of a little boy. And then the Omen remake, which is fairly turgid. So it's a fascinating time capsule. That's my way of justifying it. The Pack, which is a surprisingly good little New Zealand film about a family terrorised by a pack of wild dogs. There's a dead sheep on the back. Phantasm 2, for me the best Phantasm film, even though I've only seen Phantasm 1 and Phantasm 2. This film featured in my favourite 10 films of 1974. Phantom of the Paradise by Brian De Palma, just so much fun. Then this is a 2-disc version, a Blu-ray and a DVD, if you remember them. Back to John Carpenter and Prince of Darkness, lovely cover. An underrated film and a moving performance by Alice Cooper. The Psycho remake, just for laughs. I think this was part of a job lot. I wouldn't have actually bought this by myself. I can't even argue that I'm a Gus Van Sant completist, because I don't have too many Gus Van Sant films. That's just to wind people up and say the remake's better than the original. Back to Larry Cohen, Q the Winged Serpent, which again is a lot of fun. Michael Moriarty, Candy Clark, David Carradine, Richard Roundtree. I mean, it's a lot of fun. Low budget, but bizarrely, an Elio Petrie film is in Scream Factory, so obviously I had to pick it up after my discovery of Elio Petrie. This is the very odd A Quiet Place in the Country. Again, it's a Scream Factory release. In A Quiet Place, she strips away the structure of his mind and body piece by piece. Vanessa Redgrave and Franco Nero. There's Franco Nero looking a little bit worried in the back. This is an interesting film. Again, not perfect, not one of Petrie's best, but certainly a fascinating watch. Franco Nero's a painter and goes out, strangely enough, in a house in the country, and his girlfriend helps him with his nightmares, sort of. Yeah, a bit of a departure from Elio Petrie's more politically minded films, but certainly well worth a look, even if it's not necessarily amongst his best. But also had to pick up one of the most underrated films of the 90s. I think this was 99. Yep, I have done a random review of it a long time ago. Ravenous, probably my favourite cannibal film. I suppose this Texas Chainsaw Massacre strictly a cannibal film, I'm not quite sure. Possibly. Okay, it's maybe my second favourite cannibal film. Ravenous, and one of Guy Pearce's earliest, or no, is that not true? LA Confidential was before this, was it not? Robert Carlyle, Jeremy Davis, Jeffrey Jones and David Arquette. Wonderful sense of time and place, and lots of blood and fun. Antonio Bird, who's no longer with us either. Such an underrated film, and certainly full-blooded. Silver Bullet, again, which has a 4K from Scream Factory quite recently, which I won't buy, but I do have a soft spot for Silver Bullet. David Lynch regular Everett McGill as a minister, and Corey Haim as a little boy, literally crying wolf. So much fun. But again, I wouldn't necessarily get it in 4K, but it's a lot of fun. There's commentaries, there's 2 commentaries, new interviews. Oh, it's absolutely wonderful. Back to John Carpenter and his TV movie Someone's Watching Me, which again I put a random review out probably about 4 years ago. This is a lovely little film about a stalker. Adrienne Barbeau co-stars in it as well. Lauren Hutton is wonderful in it. It's highly recommended. This is fairly bizarre. But this, if you want to see Strother Martin as a scientist who enjoys turning people into reptiles, then this one is definitely for you. It stars Face himself, Dirk Benedict. It is weird and fairly dull for long periods, but it does have a sting in its tail. Speaking of having sting in their tail, Stung, which is one of those IFC not very good creature features, but it does have Lance Henriksen in it, desperately trying to be professional. It's one of those films you watch late night and probably regret it. My first Scream Factory 4K that I got, before I even had a 4K player, I was future proofing, is one that I've always had a soft spot for, even although It is fairly cheesy nonsense, but it takes you back to a certain place in time. It's The Sword and the Sorcerer, which has lots of nudity, lots of gore, lots of gloopy stuff. Granted, there is a stunt where the stuntman actually died and they keep it in the film because, quote, that's what he would have wanted. You know, there's wonderful interviews and makings of, and they go over that event and the decision to keep it in. 4K looks really good considering the film was fairly dark and grungy. But yes, is it a brilliant film? No, but it's a lot of fun if you're of a certain age and remember seeing it in VHS. Tales of the Crypt, Bordello of Blood. Again, for some reason, I had a soft spot for that. Dennis Miller, who is generally always annoying, and he's pretty annoying in this as well, but for some reason I have more of a soft spot for him in this than I certainly did when he did commentary on Monday Night Football. Apart from the one where a helmet rolls off and he said somebody's head's in there. It's a fun vampire film if you watch it from a distance. We're back to John Carpenter and They Live on Blu-ray. Another one of his masterpieces that doesn't get talked about enough and still relevant as a socio-political comment. So I accidentally got the 4K as well of They Live. I mean, Keith David is wonderful, and there's just not enough Keith David. Unfortunately, with Scream Factory and their 4Ks, they just repeat the cover instead of doing alternate, which they did with the Blu-rays, which is a bit strange. Just a wonderful, wonderful film. There's a ton of special features as well. This is a really good little film. The Town That Dreaded Sundown, based on a true story. 1946, of a serial killer with a bag over his head that killed 5 people. Ben Johnson actually gets a kind of starring turn, and it's just actually really creepy and really effective, but also quite bizarre. And you also get a bonus film of The Evictors, which isn't very good. I only have 2 steelbooks from Scream Factory. I didn't go mad with Scream Factory steelbooks. That's actually a lie, because I do have another one. It's in my Thing collection, which I've forgotten to take out. But that's a lovely steelbook. The Fog. And I kind of had to, well, I didn't have to, obviously. But Halloween 3, because I just love the artwork on this. It's just beautiful, beautiful artwork. And it is one of my favourite films of all time. It's just absolutely beautiful. Bit of tin. But I might have to accidentally get the 4K of Halloween 3. It's another Roger Corman classic. It's Forbidden World. This one does have 2 cuts of the film, I believe. The unrated director's cut and the theatrical cut. And another Roger Corman cult classic, another John Sayles themed Battle Beyond the Stars, one of the best Seven Samurai rip-offs. And if you're a Sybil Danning fan, it's required viewing. And that co-stars Robert Vaughn, who of course is the only person who is in Battle Beyond the Stars and The Magnificent Seven. Now this one is a Shout Factory. We're going on to Shout Factory here, but it's just a kind of random Shout Factory. This is a Blu-ray DVD of Living in Oblivion, with Steve Buscemi. One of the early roles for Peter Dinklage. It's just a wonderfully funny look at being a first-time director. It does have lots of laughs as he is trying to survive and dealing with divas, not just in the cast but also in the crew. Now we're going on to Shout Select, and we're going to start with number 3, which is Midnight Run. Again, this does have a 4K. It is one of my favourite films of all time. I'm not sure I'll ever get the 4K though. As you know, I'm kind of slowing down with 4Ks apart from the 4Ks that I'll be getting. This is just wonderful. This has new extras that are newer than the Region B release. And then we have Walter Hill's Streets of Fire, which is number 16, with the nice slipcover. I believe this has a 4K as well from Shout Factory, but that might be a lie. This is a 2-disc. It's got a lengthy making of, which is quite wonderful. Number 42 is a Robert Mitchum double bill of Farewell My Lovely, which is absolutely brilliant. I did a video on both these films at some point in my channel. And The Big Sleep, which relocates it to London and is not so good. But Farewell My Lovely is absolutely fantastic. The next one is number 79, and this was part of my Joseph Losey season. You can find that playlist on my channel somewhere. And this is a love it or hate it film. This is Boom! Exclamation. With Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. This is one of John Waters' favourite films. He does a commentary which is hilarious. This is an absolute masterpiece for me. Other people say it's one of the worst films they've ever seen in their life, but I absolutely adored it. Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor and Joseph Losey apparently were drunk most of the time when they made it. Noel Coward turns up playing a character that was in Tennessee Williams' play but was female. Noel Coward turns up and plays that. Liz Taylor and Richard Burton were so drunk that they offered to buy the house where it was filmed, even though the house where it was filmed was actually a set and didn't have like 4 walls. But that's the power of alcohol. So that's number 79, Boom, which you will either love or hate. Next is number 107, the only film I've ever had on my personal stereo on cassette that I used to listen to when I commuted. I was going to say David Mamet's Glengarry Glen Ross, but it's technically James Foley's Glengarry Glen Ross, written by David Mamet based on his own play. This is just brilliant. I can't really remember where it. Well, I didn't rank my favourite films of all time. 250. I just kind of had them there. But this is right up there. I remember renting it out on VHS with family members who just were confused because it's just an hour and a half of people talking and mostly swearing quite a lot. It's Alec Baldwin's best 8 minutes, for whatever that counts for. The Shout Select has new extras that are different from Region B releases. It's just spectacularly good, but obviously you have to be a little bit strange like me to say that. Number 125 is Cronenberg's Butterfly, which is kind of underrated. Obviously fairly savaged when it came out, based on a true story, but I guess it's sort of relevant with gender fluidity in the news these days. Jeremy Irons again teaming up with Cronenberg and John Lone. It's a beautifully mounted. It's a beautiful looking film, and again it just has that Cronenberg feel, and wonderful cinematography and another. How do you describe Howard Shore's music? Haunting score. And next, 141 is the Sonny Chiba collection. This is just fantastic. It's 7 films. Now, Eureka has started to release a few of these over in the UK. So we've got Yakuza Wolf 1 and 2, which is soon to be released by Eureka. Bodyguard Kiba 1 and 2, which are soon to be released from Eureka. I have Shogun Shadow Samurai Reincarnation, which has already been released by Eureka, and I have double dipped because the cover on that's really nice. And Swords of Vengeance. So this set's really good because it's not, 7 Yakuza films, 7 martial arts films. It's all a good mix. There's no more than 2 films in each disc. They are all wonderful. And again, as I said, it's just such a good mix of films, so they never really feel repetitive. So that's number 141, Sonny Chiba collection. And 149 is the Sonny Chiba collection volume 2. I do think Shout Select do have a couple of Jackie Chan collections as well. So this again is 7 films. The Definitive Power of Aikido, 13 Steps of Maki, which is absolutely fantastic. Granted, Sonny Chiba's only in it for a flashback. It stars Sister Street Fighter, and it's just wonderful. I did a review of that. Karate Warriors, The Great Okinawa Yakuza War, Karate for Life, Golgo 13, Assignment Kulong, which is a fun sequel, or one of the sequels. There's actually quite a lot of sequels to Golgo 13, which was released by Eureka, starring Takakura Ken. And the Okinawa War of 10 Years. I would say this set probably isn't as good film by film as Volume 1, but it's still well worth checking out. Now, whether Eureka will release titles from this volume remains to be seen, but again, it's a good mix. I mean, there's no samurai films in this set. It's more Yakuza and martial arts based, but it's well worth checking out if you're a fan of the Chiba. And finally, Shout Select number 152. I had to, it's not my fault. The 4K of Clue, one of my favourite films of all time. So misunderstood. Lots of people absolutely hate it, and that's absolutely fair. But I've loved this the first time I ever saw it. Tim Curry is just absolutely fantastic. It has the best ironing board gag in cinema history. It's 2 discs and it has lots of extras. Sadly, it doesn't have the documentary, which is a separate entity. I think Vinegar Syndrome released that. I could be wrong. It might be Severn in actual fact. But it's just so good. So you've got a 4K and the second disc is a Blu-ray. I couldn't help myself. I only had it on a Blu-ray, so I kind of had to get it in 4K, and it looks fantastic. So that's a fairly rambling video of my Shout and Scream Factory, minus my Thing Scream Factory Steelbook, which I conveniently forgot about because it's in my Thing collection. because as you know I have a thing about the thing. So thanks very much for watching. Please let me know what Scream Factory titles, Shout Factory select titles I should really pick up, and which ones I should put down. And hopefully you'll join me again for more videos. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.